So it's been a couple of weeks that I've been trying to drive home this conception that from the metaphysical root of our being, which is a mystery, stem our feelings, and from our feelings stem our values, from our values stem our behavior, and from our behavior, once they become patterned, are the roles we play in life. Now, in relationship to becoming possessed by some feeling that then, well, rather than being possessed by a feeling, let's say we're possessed by behavior. There's a certain behavior that arises compulsively. I linked this compulsive behavior to addictive behavior. Addiction is really popular right now, so there's a lot of people that have been observing addictive behavior in, like celebrity rehab and all this stuff. So there's a lot of good old-fashioned object lessons, a large set of behaviors that people can understand under the rubric of addiction. But the key here being compulsive behavior, being possessed by evaluations that inform our behavior. And the evaluations our values stem from our feelings. So, could be in this situation, as I was explaining to my friend, that there are some feelings that have been long neglected, and that from a larger point of view, for the next phase of life development, these feelings need to be addressed, need to be experienced, need to have experience so that they can develop. And then we must come to terms with them. We must contend with them. I recently reread a German word, Auseinandersetzung. And there's a couple different definitions. When I first read it, it states it's untranslatable, but basically means a coming to terms with. But it's a struggle. And there's a German lady I know that a mother of a friend, and she said, no, it doesn't necessarily mean you come to terms with it. I was like, interesting. And then I immediately thought that, depending upon, where you grew up, how you use the word, different people in America use different words in different places to mean different things. And so interpretation is exactly that, just an interpretation. But in the confrontation with these compulsive behaviors that we do not have control over, detachment from, we become possessed by, we start developing a relationship with it. It's a whole new territory, so to say. A different aspect of our being, which is metaphysical, beyond the physical. And I went into explaining how some people don't have their own identity, and they get their identity from outside of them. And it's much easier that way. They don't have to go through a struggle. They're just told what to do. They're just told how to behave. But then what happens when that valued behavior becomes devalued or is no longer operable? It doesn't operate in an effectively productive cultivation for the role they want to play, or the role that they play just does not effectively produce the results that they've been trained. It's sort of like that old saying, work hard and you'll be a success. Well, it's a matter of interpretation. some people like to, split some hairs and say, well, it's not what you do, but how you do it. You gotta work smart. So if you work hard smartly, then you'll have success. But if you work hard stupidly, you won't. I think all these perspectives hold water from their own little, rubric, their own little umbrella, their own little room that they come from. But getting all of these together into one single cohesive vision requires a wholeness within ourselves, I think. And which means we have to go through this inner experience of our multiple and various valuings and behaviors and roles we play. And we have to come to terms with them. And everything's changing so quickly in the world. I recently told a friend that there was this movie that I wanted to see called Hugo because I liked the animation in it, the special effects. And I said it's basically a young man trying to come to terms with how to make his way in a mechanized world. Even though I know nothing about the movie, I've only seen these little tidbits, with all these machines and mechanics and all this stuff. And I knew in that instant they went, whoa, that's a cool perspective, because they had already seen the movie. And they hadn't even thought of it that way. But from how I was saying it, and because they understood how I am, a whole different perspective arose in understanding the purpose of art, of trying to give perspective to the needs that are required of us in our actual life. It's not just entertainment. Many people go into a movie just to be entertained, possessed by, overwhelmed by the phantasmagoric carnival of forms flashing before their eyes. And in this possession, we can get a release of tension. And stepping back and detaching and observing can drain the magic out of that state of possession. And I think this is where a great deal of America's struggles comes from. We see a lot of these people on television who are possessed by some character that they have invented in their own mind. And people like them because these people are possessed. They are possessed by a character. But this is basically schizophrenia. For all intent and purposes, these people are possessed. They do not step back and detach themselves from what they're doing. Now, there are some artists, some performers that, yes, have this skill, but you can only make them aware of it on their terms, no one else's terms, which is very selfish, very compulsive, very controlling, and manipulative. This is not a coming to terms with life as it is. This is a demand of life to be as they see fit, to experience it. And some people just have doors open to them, but ultimately, with this survival of the fittest mentality of competition, what ends up arising is what's popular.